Roger, that was terrific. Really great. I was given the job of responding for 5 to 10 minutes, which is going to be hard because, A, you can't top that, and B, because there was so much to respond to. But there are a couple of lines that in what Roger said I want to tee off from, and that was that we gain our loyalty, we give our loyalty to a territory. And secondly, that socialism is about remaking society. It appeals to that instinct of force, I guess, to remake society, and it's taking up the cause of oppressed minorities. Now we're about, this is all a meeting, a conversation about liberty. And liberty for me, I am not an anarchist, and nor am I an authoritarian. I'm in the middle, but I realise that we need some boundaries to behaviour. We need some guides to behaviour. But I think they're best done with velvet restraints, not iron restraints. And that comes from custom, tradition, and orthodoxies, not all of which are malign, malignant. They're guides. They're the inherited wisdom that is communicated. And we can defy it or not and risk public wrath or not, but that strikes me as a safer guide, a safer restraint than do harsh laws, hard laws imposed by an individual or a couple of individuals or the full bench of a court. And it gives you not only more freedom, it gives you the idea that you are free, which I think is essential. Now, obviously, I've gone through some of this myself, this conflict, with articles arguing, as John said, about whether we really should be so focused on identifying with a particular so-called race or ethnicity, particularly if our background comprises ancestors of many various ones, and whether then that identification should be privileged with jobs or benefits or awards. Now, apparently it's racist now to question that. It's interesting, with the argument now about whether 18C should be reformed to allow this kind of debate, that it's too often posited as an argument between those who wish to unleash racist hell or even legitimise it, and those who wish to stop it. So the evil versus the good. When in fact, I haven't heard a single proponent of the reform case say they want racism, they endorse racism, and they just are champing at the bit to unleash racism. To me, the debate is not between we want racism or we don't. It is actually between those who trust the public and those who don't. That trust the public's good sense and these velvet restraints that I think have actually demonstrated themselves to be quite effective in the fact that we have a country where people actually flock from all corners of the world to be part of it, including people that we're allegedly at risk of demonising. They actually feel safer here, which is why so many take to the boats. Now, a good example of what I mean about these velvet restraints, of course, was illustrated by the LA Clippers example, where the owner of the LA Clippers basketball team makes a number of racist comments. Now, let's ignore the fact that he said it in private and what issues that all raises, but the point is that Americans were trusted, in a sense, because they do not have our kinds of laws, to demonstrate by their actions, their words and whatever, their resistance to the sort of ideas, their loathing of those ideas, and you might think it went overboard, but there it was. Free speech actually didn't legitimise racism, it denounced it. You can trust people. Now, I want to pick up on one line. Roger's written a wonderful book called Modern Culture, but there was one line in it, only one, in a very thick book, that I took exception to, and it feeds into my response to Roger's speech, and that was the line that tribes are vanishing from the modern world. Now, I don't actually think that's the case at all. I think we're reconstructing tribalism. We're in fact inviting tribes, in a sense. And immigration today, because of different factors that applied to the time that my parents came out here, resembles, in some instances, with some people in some areas, as heavily qualified, not tribalism but colonisation, of the sort of Greek model in the classical period. And I got a nice insight into this when I ordered my cable TV, and I could watch Dutch programs all night. It was wonderful. In fact, you know, increasingly I felt a little bit like Roger warned in Modern Culture, a stranger among strangers, consumed by a helpless longing for an attachment that I'd destroyed by my own cold thinking, like Dutchman among Australians, and what did I share? And my children are horrified. I mean, I've got the World Cup coming on, Holland versus Australia. Who am I going to barrack for? It's something that outrages my youngest son that I could even hesitate. Now, that's all lovely, but then I go up and down the channels and I see there's people that can sit at home and watch videos, news and channel and current affairs and whatever from Jordan or from Iraq or from Iran. Iraq, that's amazing what we've done for that place. You can watch TV from Iraq. You can watch from all sorts, whatever your demographic is, you can watch it, and you don't have to engage with Australian society beyond maybe picking up a pension check or something like that. And I exaggerate slightly, but not that much if you go to some parts of this country. And indeed, we're seeing this tribalism manifest itself in people swearing their loyalty to jihadist groups in Syria right now, for example, in opposition to here, or waging war on this country. Now, of the 20 terrorists so far that we've jailed, every one of them belongs to an Islamic cause or group or affiliation, everyone. Now, of course, a very small minority, very small minority. But here is the problem. Socialism, said Roger wisely, was about remaking society and taking up the causes of oppressed minorities. And I think one of the great failings of socialism, one of the great disasters in that trying to find material on which to feed, causes on which to feed, in order to then license their desire to control, socialism or socialists have too often taken up the cause of multiculturalism and ethnic minorities. Now, I know there's now a debate that's been held in the Prospect magazine in England, for example, revising, rethinking some of this, but that's very small. The idea is to take up the grievance of the minority and posit it against the oppression of the majority, and at the same time to delegitimise the majority, thinking, what are your certainties, what are these oppressive traditions you have, etc. And increasingly we see ourselves being tribalised, in that the future is about negotiating deals with various ethnic groups rather than considering ourselves as one people, one loyalty, and a loyalty not to a territory, as Roger said, but essentially to a people. Now, traditionally that was, for a long time, that's been defined as within boundaries, that within a boundary was a people that gained your loyalty. Now we're not sharing loyalty, we're sharing territory, and we owe our loyalty increasingly to the groups within it. And a statement of how absurd this is starting to become was in the Prime Minister's own Chief Indigenous Affairs Advisor, Warren Mundine, suggesting in the society we should form a cascading series of treaties with more than 100, 200, I think it was a figure, more than 200 different Aboriginal groups. So treaty, 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 treaty. And when you think too of the various multicultural kind of grants and how that's going to be manifested increasingly into laws as well. And it's interesting that of all the absurd restrictions on our free speech that have been mentioned, one by Roger, one by John, they have increasingly been disputes over over exactly this territory, that to insult someone on the grounds of race now is the great crime. Now, in part, I think that's born by an anxiety that we are this nation of tribes, and one bad word and you'll set, boom, Lakemba riot off or something like that. You know, the Muhammad cartoons, newspapers voluntarily refuse to publish them here for fear of something. And increasingly that's happening now, that you cannot say certain things because we have to police, we have to actually police this idea of us being a collection of tribes at war. Now that is not necessarily where we are, that is the perception underlining these laws. So from this faith, this loyalty, this love of community where we can trust each other, we're being asked to consider ourselves more as warring groups or just groups coinciding in the territory, with the law then having to be imposed from on top. And I think that is where our liberties are being eroded. It's only one area, but I think it's serious in that, among other things, it destroys trust, which builds a community. No trust, no community. It demands, it elevates the idea of rights rather than responsibilities. I, as a member of a group, have a right that is in opposition to yours. I declare it against your group. There is very little commonality in that sort of conception of society, and we are increasingly going down this route. The whole idea of there being a constitutional amendment to change the constitution right now, which is being considered by a Liberal government, so that we acknowledge one First Peoples, however defined, is exactly a move into that direction. There are no First Peoples, unless you want to call the first people who actually arrived here, that are alive today. There are none. That is defining people by who their ancestors were, not by anything that they themselves have done. It is a group in which you are born, in which you must stay, and that you have then superior claims or different claims against other groups in the society. I think we need to resist it. I don't think freedom is being advanced here. It is an anti-freedom agenda. I think it is driven by the left. It's not necessarily driven by any demand from underneath. It is a top-down push with top-down laws, and I just think it goes against everything what we should be about, which is treating each other as individuals, bound by common interests, common culture, common love, a trust. We're not that we're giving our loyalty to a territory, but to a people. Thank you very much.